I'm Marites Vitug. Welcome to Southeast Asia Speaks. This is the show where I get to interview resource persons and newsmakers on issues affecting the region. I will be speaking to Admiral George Ursabia Jr., former chief of the Philippine Coast Guard. He retired in September after leading the Coast Guard for more than a year. We will be talking about the role of the Coast Guard in protecting the West Philippine Sea. It was during his watch that the Coast Guard actively did patrols in the West Philippine Sea and drove away intruding Chinese vessels. So thank you so much, Admiral Orsabia, for making time for this interview.
It's my pleasure to be here, Miss Marites, Madam Marites, I should say.
Anyway, sir, let's start muna from the beginning. So when you took over the Coast Guard, ano sa inyo yung pinaka malaking problema at anong naging priority ninyo to address and how did you address these problems? Siguro ano lang ho, briefly, broad strokes to let our viewers know how the Coast Guard was when you inherited it.
Yes, I took over the leadership of the Philippine Coast Guard last year, June 1, 2020. At panahon na yon ay kasagsagan ng COVID, no? And that was the foremost challenge that I was facing when I took over as the commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard. Well, while I considered myself to be so blessed to be given a chance to lead the Philippine Coast Guard, but the challenge was just overwhelming, specifically on how to handle COVID-19 related challenges, considering that the Philippine Coast Guard was tapped to be at the front line, not only in the seaports and coastal areas, but it included our airports. So we were helping and supporting the Bureau of Quarantine, Immigrations, and other lead agencies of government that is in charge in the processing of those entering our country through our airports. So yun po, syempre we need to deploy additional manpower, and not only manpower to include logistics. So having said that, of course, we have to realign our resources to the foremost task given to us at the time. And it was a marching order to me when I took over as commandant, a marching order from Malacanang to really, for Coast Guard to help the lead agencies in addressing the concerns at the airport. So, yun po isa sa mga problema or challenge I would say at the time. Not to mention also, syempre, yung mga tauhan namin nandoon yung takot pa din, although hindi naman obvious sa kanila na pag nakikita natin sila, they have to be there looking strong and confident in doing their job. But of course, there is that fear still in them because they know that COVID-19 is deadly. So I have to address that because it's affecting already their morale. And of course, we have to consider also the element of fatigue. So kailangan i-rotate ng mga personnel natin, deploying them there. At hindi po madali yan because you have to consider also the availability of manpower that you have at hand. At hindi lamang po yan, admittedly, we were not really ready to face such kind of battle, if we may say so. So it was a new one for us. So kailangan talagang mag-adjust kami, mag-innovate kami, and I have to reorganize the different frontline units and organizations that I have had into one task force so that it can operate in a well organized manner kasi merong medyo fragmented kasi at the time yung deployment ng mga frontline units ng Coast Guard in addressing this COVID-19 related task. And we succeeded in organizing them as one task force. And it remains as such until now. And we have
So, sir,
been, I
yeah.
suppose, effective.
So, sir, pero during your time, habang ginagawa niyo yung frontline work dun sa COVID, it was also during your time na I don't know kung, please correct me if I'm wrong, but was it on your watch na nag-umpisa yung active patrolling sa West Philippine Sea ng Coast Guard? Tsaka I remember, sir, it was the Coast Guard which released photos of the swarming ng mga Chinese fishing vessels or militia. Um, and also, remember, sir, the use of the women's voices that became quite
Yeah.
a story. So anyway, please tell us, maybe you can walk us through this process of deciding to do active patrols. And ano yung highlights ng experience na yun, sir?
Oh, well, with all due respect to my predecessors naman, the PCG has not really abandoned yung doing patrols at the West Philippine Sea. Maybe the only significant change during my time until now is on the tempo of our patrol missions. And the reasons are very simple. One, we now have more, well, appropriate ships and well-prepared personnel uh, who have, who can really be deployed, who can be or will be deployed in the West Philippine Sea, not only in West Philippine Sea, in the entire maritime domain that we have. Because that's my instruction. Let us not focus too much on West Philippine Sea. We have to think of the entire maritime domain. That's what I told because I created this task force pagsasanay. And the purpose of this task force pagsasanay is, well, to really patrol our maritime domain. But deploying more floating assets in problem areas, one of which is or a challenged area, one of which is the West Philippine Sea. Then the second reason is to optimize our resources, no? Kasi right now we have 10 relatively still brand new, multi-role response vessels. These are 44 meters long, which we acquired from Japan, and one offshore patrol vessel, which we acquired from France. Having these floating assets now, or platforms as we call them, um, uh, as commandant then, I felt that we were ready to face the challenge, not only in our territorial waters, even beyond, so to include our EEZ. So we organized accordingly, which I created the Task Force Pagsasanay to be more aggressive in flying our flag and being visible in these sea areas. And that started it all. I suppose we became visible publicly because of that efforts of ours, and it is being sustained until now. And
So,
now, part of our strategy as well, as I've said, while we are into really stepping up our presence and flying our flag in the EEZ, um, we have to be very cautious and do our effort based on rules and in a peaceful manner. This is in compliance with the Secretary of Transportation's guidance to us, Secretary Tugade, that you should make sure that your effort should be based on rules and in a peaceful manner. So that's what we did, and part of which we employed female in these efforts of ours. So we came up with this idea of the radio operators on board ships of the Philippine Coast Guard should be female, so that we have experienced this way back in 2018 in the Cebutu Passage and Basilan Straits, wherein female radio operators of the Philippine Coast Guards were the ones challenging transiting ships on those areas. And we were receiving good feedbacks from seafarers, from mariners, that they para bang nakakagaan ng loob para sa kanila pag naririnig nila yung boses ng babae challenging them over the radio at naalala nila yung nanay at mga anak nilang babae at saka yung mga kapatid din ng babae. So it softens them. So having this experience of ours, we tried to use this in the West Philippine Sea in challenging also other actors in the West Philippine Sea, and we find it effective as well.
So sir, yung paggamit ng female voices or female radio operators happened na pala in 2018. And
Yes, yes.
did you, was there a model that you got this from or from other coast guards, or tayo ba ang it was an innovation, or kasi hindi nga common ho yun eh. Were we the first in Southeast Asia?
We cannot say so, but wala rin kaming nakitang modelo dyan. It was just an initiative on our part. Kasi we want to really emphasize that the Philippine Coast Guard is a humanitarian agency. Yan ang inaano namin. So, gusto naming ipakita sa publiko na yung kababaihan sa hanay namin ay nagagamit, no? Nagagamit. Lalo na 30% of the Philippine Coast Guard personal strength ay mga babae. So we want to have an optimum use of this female Coast Guard personnel. And dapat gamitin namin kung saan sila medyo or talagang mapapakinabangan. At isa sa mga nakikita nga namin ay sa crisis management. We believe that women are generally more stable and compassionate than men. Ay, niwala ka ba dyan, Ma'am
Yes,
Dito?
of course, sir. That you are reinforcing
Diba?
our views here as women.
Oo. Women empowerment kasi inaano talaga namin sa Coast Guard eh. Kasi marami na kami mga kababaihan na mga magagaling po talaga. Magagaling po talaga. Sayang naman kung hindi namin sila mabigyan ng ng opportunity to show their talent, to put in good use their talent and their strength.
Sir, siyempre, you know, we have a very long coastline. The Philippines is one of the top 10 countries in the world with the longest coastline. So, meron kayong pang priority areas for the Coast Guard to patrol? Meron ba kayong ganon? Like, first, dito muna sa West Philippine Sea, or equal lahat?
Alam mo, Marites, sa ngayon na medyo dumadami na yung mga floating assets natin, yung tawag natin platforms, equal na lahat eh. Hindi katulad noon na we only have a number of these platforms. We have to juggle ito mga floating assets natin dun sa mga priority areas. But right now, and during my time when I was commandant, depending on the classifications of our ships, ito mga bago natin, 10 bago natin, mga 44-meter patrol, multi-role response vessels from Japan, nilagay po natin ito sa tinatawag kong outer periphery. So, katulad dyan sa West Philippine Sea, meron dyan 4 na dedicated na multi-role response vessel. Doon naman sa southernmost part ng Pilipinas, we're talking of the Sambasulta area, as well as doon sa may Jensan area, meron naman doon 3. Meron 3 doon. At of course, meron isa doon sa Davao region. Then the remaining 2 na meron tayo, ito yung nandito sa Central Philippines dahil nandyan yung maritime routes natin. So mga nandyan, so we should also preposition Coast Guard vessels. So in these maritime routes, because in case of eventuality, we have readily available brand new 44 multi-role response vessels. But in addition to these two, there are other mga, well, may mga edad na rin na yung mga luma natin mga barko na operational pa naman, naka-deploy naman dyan at even small craft. So we strategize it as such, no? Na itong mga bago are really deployed in the outer periphery of our archipelago. So may nakatutok talaga diyan katulad sa West Philippine Sea. May apat diyan nakatutok na multi-role vessels. And we have our offshore patrol vessel ready to augment and other bigger vessels na ready to augment if necessary. These four multi-role vessels na nakatutok dyan sa West Philippine Sea, as well as yung mga nandun sa southernmost part, ready rin na i-augment yon na itong mga medyo malaking barko natin. So we
So,
have such kind of strategy, Madam Bito.
so sir, sabi nyo, rules-based, peaceful.
Yeah.
So how do the Coast Guard officials or personnel enforce like the law on illegal fishing, whether it's Chinese
Yeah.
vessel, Vietnamese vessel, or local vessel? Kasi di ba ho ba to avoid accidents? Remember what happened before with a Taiwanese fishing boat? So ano yung lessons learned from the past na ini-implement ngayon so that it will be a rules-based and peaceful uh, behavior in any of our part of our coastline?
Oo, no? Kami sa Coast Guard, realizing the fact that ako galing din ako sa front line, no? Mahirap talaga pag ikaw ang kapitan ng isang barko, nandun ka sa laot at meron ka nakikitang kailigalan na dapat kong aksyonan. Pero it's a contested area at kita mo iba pang nationality. So minsan nandun talaga yung confusion no? You are not that confident how you should do it, no? How you should address that kind of situation, ano? So with such experience of ours, we made it a point that our operating units will be equipped with the necessary instrument. So we really endeavored to come up with that appropriate instrument, which we now call the Rules on the Use of Force or the RUF. So talagang we crafted such kind of instrument, Rules on the Use of Force. Ito po yung pinaka-Bible, so to speak, ng mga frontline units namin, especially ng mga commanding officers ng mga barko namin. At ito ay approved at promulgated by no less than the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Secretary Tugade, at saka it was also recognized by the National Task Force in the West Philippine Sea. So ito po ngayon ang ginagamit ng mga barko natin at hindi lamang yan, Madam Bitog. Meron din po kaming inassign na mga abogado kada barko para naman there is a lawyer readily available on board to give legal advice to our commanding officers if the situation warrants out at sea pag mayroong mga ganitong sitwasyon. So ito yung mga innovations namin para more or less maging effective ang mga operating units namin when doing such patrol out there in our maritime domain, lalo na dyan sa West Philippine Sea.
So sir, when you were commandant of the Coast Guard, hindi naman kayo nagkaroon ng confrontation, your Coast Guard vessels?
Fortunately, wala. Fortunately, wala talaga. Kasi yung mga barko namin, they challenged naman. They went to challenging those other actors there, no? Lalo na sa West Philippine Sea. Um, sa awa ng Diyos, nirespeto naman ng mga other actors yung authority ng Coast Guard. Talagang lumalayo naman talaga sila. In fact, one of our multi-role response vessel, 44-meter response vessel, nasalubong pa yung isang naval ship ng foreign flag. Napakalaki. Chinalog
China,
niya.
China ho, China ho ito.
China, China. Umiwas naman. Umiwas naman, lumayo naman sila. So nakita namin na they recognize and respect the authority of the Coast Guard, yung white hull ship. Effective yung yung white ship diplomacy na ginagawa natin diyan sa na strategy na in-employ natin diyan sa West Philippine Sea.
So sir, going to the bigger picture naman, how does the Philippine Coast Guard compare to our neighbors? At least like yung mga like Thailand, yung mga Malaysia, of course Singapore maybe more advanced, Vietnam. Paano ho tayo nagko-compare in terms of assets or training?
Well, I would say hindi naman tayo napapag-iwanan ng mga yan. Although they have more and bigger platforms. We call the ships kasi platforms. It's a generic term. So, mas malaki naman yung kanila. Pero tayo naman, we are in the process of gearing up also, no? So, yun na nga, nabanggit ko na meron na tayong 10 44-meter vessels na relatively brand new. Then, meron tayong OPV from France, brand new din po ito. Then, by next year, magkakaroon na po tayo na mas malaki, these two 94-meter long multi-role response vessel, but these are also offshore patrol vessel. So, makikita natin na ang Coast Guard natin dito sa Pilipinas are towards modernizing na talaga. At ito kasi yung direksyon ni Secretary Tugade. He's really the father of the modern Coast Guard. Kaya nagpapasalamat kami sa kanya dahil iyan po yung vision niya talaga. Of course, ng presidente din natin. Kaya napakaswerte namin ng Philippine Coast Guard kasi we are into really gearing up, getting brand new platforms, not only ships, but to include aircrafts, helicopters, and airplanes. So we are going towards that direction naman. So masasabi ko, we are at par. And we are at par now with our neighboring countries as far as Coast Guard capability is concerned.
Sir, meron bang cooperation among Southeast Asian Coast Guards? Like, do we have a joint or multilateral exercises? Or is there a sharing of experience, sharing of intelligence? Is there some form of cooperation, sir, sa mga Coast Guard ng
Yes, yes.
ASEAN?
Noon pa man. Noon pa man. Meron tayong bilateral agreement on that, tripartite agreement, meron tayong regional agreement. So meron tayong mga formal organization and such, or formal bodies and such. Like for example, yung RICAAP, Regional Cooperation on Anti-Piracy and Anti-Robbery at Sea, no? Then yung meron din tayong tinatawag na HAGCAM, Heads of Asian Coast Guards Meeting, no? Meron din tayong MLE, Maritime Law Enforcement Agencies. So marami in place na po yan, and we have a bilateral agreement with Taiwan, with even with China on search and rescue. Most of these are related to humanitarian efforts, search and rescue, marine environmental protection. So yun po yung mga in place na mga cooperation natin with other countries, especially with our neighboring countries.
Sir, meron bang any particular lesson or lessons that the Philippine Coast Guard can learn from those of our neighbors. Kasi medyo more advanced siguro yung Singapore or Thailand or Malaysia. Is there anything in particular, sir, na we can learn from them?
Alam mo, Madam Marites, sa totoo lang, tayo yung pinakamatandang Coast Guard dito sa Asia Pacific, dito sa tawag ito, Southeast Asia. We are 120 years old. At yung mga neighboring countries natin, mga bago lang yung mga Coast Guard nila. Ginaya nga lang nila yung Coast Guard natin. Sila pa yung nangopya sa atin because they've realized that Coast Guard is indeed effective and it is now an emerging law enforcement and humanitarian service that can really that is really effective in patrolling and do regulatory efforts in our maritime domain. So kung learning from them, I think they're learning from us. They're learning from us. But of course, admittedly, we also learn from them. It's a give and take, um, exercise, and there are sharing of information, sharing of doctrines. So, and we also send some of our personnel to other countries to learn from them and to adopt that doctrines if applicable here in our country, and vice versa. Ganun naman ang nangyayari dyan, Madam Marites.
Yeah. Sir, I think I remember lang, maybe the final question is, I just remember that the Coast Guard wasn't given really a lot of attention noon, hindi ho ba, sir? I think it was
Yeah.
only in 2012 during the Scarborough um, um, standoff na
Yeah.
nagkaroon ng attention to the Coast Guard. So since then, nagkaroon ng improvements. No? Is that correct, sir? So
Tama yan. Tama
it's
talaga
quite
po
recent.
yan.
It's quite recent then.
Tama po yan, Madam Marites, kasi alam mo naman, galing kami sa Navy. We came from the Navy and we separated from the Navy in 1998. Dahil nga it's unconstitutional for the Philippine Coast Guard to remain a law enforcement agency and is at the same time having that military character. So katulad ng PNP, we have to get rid of our military character. So we have to separate from the armed forces. That was in 1998. But it was only in 2010 that we were able to get our enabling law. It took us a long time to really get our enabling law, which is now the Coast Guard Law of 2009 or yung RA 9993. So doon pa lang po talaga nakapagsimula ang Coast Guard na mag-capacitate. Kasi nung wala pang enabling law ang Coast Guard, after separating from the Philippine Navy, it was very difficult for us to justify or get budget from through Congress kasi wala kaming enabling law. But when we had that enabling law, so doon kami naging effective in getting the necessary budget, but it was not as quick as that, no? So yung 2012 standoff, Scarborough standoff, was a turning point really in terms of capacitating the Philippine Coast Guard because our government eventually realized, hindi pala pwede itong Navy lang gamitin natin dito. Better that we capacitate our Coast Guard dahil nandun na yung white ship diplomacy or white hull diplomacy or white to white ship diplomacy. So, yun. Doon na po nagsimula talaga. And totoo nga naman. Now, you can see our Coast Guard has grown exponentially.
Yes, on that note, sir, it's very interesting that you stress the white ship diplomacy, which I think has really gained a lot of traction in the region, no, sir? And
Yes,
it
yes.
has put the spotlight on the Coast Guard. So hiwalay na kasi yung role ng Navy. So well,
Yeah.
on that note, looks like there's more to come sa Philippine Coast Guard, but of course you're no longer there. But I'm sure you will keep watch. You will keep
Of
monitor
course.
developments in the Coast Guard. So thank you so
So,
much, Admiral Ursabia, and thank you to our listeners and viewers. at least we got a glimpse into the Philippine Coast Guard, which, as we said earlier, has really been quite at the background of our
Yeah. Yeah.
consciousness. And anyway, again, thank you, and we will continue this conversation on the maritime issues of the Philippines and the region. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Martes.